Bienvenidos to Pica Poco Kitchen. Today we're making pastes. Vámonos! To talk about pastes, we have to talk about two nations. In Mexico, we'll travel to Hidalgo, the land of the Otomi people. The state of Hidalgo is located in the north of the Valley of Mexico, 94 kilometers away from Mexico City. Its landscape is full of valleys and mountains, which give it its name of La Bella Airosa, or airy beauty. But airy in Spanish not only stands for windy, it also stands for graceful, and I think that suits the state really well. After its independence, Mexico took back control of their mining, which was previously being exploited by the Spanish during the colony. So they developed their mining industry. In 1824, Real del Monte, a town in Pachuca de Soto, the state's capital, became the most important place for silver mining, which brought a lot of British immigrants, especially from Cornwall, for job opportunities. These men brought their mining techniques, their families, and traditions, amongst them Cornish pastries. So pasties are basically a development or adaptation of Cornish pastries into the Mexican cuisine. They were originally made with beef and potatoes, but now you can find them in Pachuca, filled with any Mexican dish that you can think of. Pasties today are a staple of the whole state. A long time ago, I had the opportunity to go to the Pastas Museum in Pachuca, and I took a workshop on how to make pastas, and I learned a thing or two. And today, I want to share it with you. So let's go. For my pastas, I'm going the traditional way. I'm gonna start with half an onion finely diced in a good amount of olive oil. Non-traditional, but I can help myself whenever I'm cooking onion, is that I am going to add one garlic clove, also finely diced. I don't know about you, but I think that onion and garlic are best friends and they should go together everywhere. I'm also gonna add one leek, is around 1 cup, and I am using the bottom half from where it's white to the beginning of the leaves, and I dice that finely. We're gonna give that a mix and wait until it softens a little bit. For my meat, I'm going with fajitas that I cubed. You can use any kind of meat you want, you can cube it, or if you don't want to bother, you can also use minced meat. We're going to season well with salt and pepper. For your potatoes, you have different options. You can go like me and pre-cook your potato, grate it, and add it once everything is almost ready. That way, everything is going to be faster and you'll have control of the coction of everything. If you don't want to do that, then you can use raw potatoes, just chop them in small dice and add them after the leek. We want our pastas filling to be saucy, so I'm gonna make a gravy. I'm adding half a cup of beef broth, and to that I'm adding a cornstarch slurry. I diluted 1 tablespoon of cornstarch in cold water and added it after the broth. This is gonna help thicken the broth and the juice from the meat and the veggies, and it's gonna give us a nice gravy. And when everything starts to boil and I'm about to turn the heat off, I add a handful of chopped parsley. At this point, it would be nice to add as well a little bit of jalapeño, either pickled or fresh, but I completely forgot. So once we give it a mix, let's turn this off, transfer it to a different container, and let it cool completely. To make the pastas, we need to make a dough. So I'm gonna start with 500 grams of all-purpose flour, and to that I am going to add 1 tablespoon of salt. We're gonna give that a mix, and then we're gonna add the fat. I'm adding 150 grams of butter and 150 grams of lard. They are both at room temp, which is going to make the next step easy. So we are trying to mix the flour and the fat by just breaking it down with our fingers. Mix everything well and keep squeezing and massaging, adding more flour until everything feels like sand. And you can skip that step and do it in your food processor with a couple of pulses. My cup is not that big, so I prefer doing this part by hand. But if you're doing a smaller batch, you can use your food processor as well. I have here 3/4 of a cup of not warm but tepid water that I will be adding slowly because you might use it all or you might not. So add a little at a time and start doughing. In the beginning, you're gonna end up with a shaggy dough just like this, but keep working it and it's gonna come together. I ended up not using it all, so that's why it's important to just do a little, work your dough and see if it's asking for more. You don't want a sticky dough, just want a dough that is well hydrated, not sticky, but it comes together. When there's no more flour in your bowl, you can take it to your table and work it a little bit just to get it smooth and even. You don't have to work this kind of dough too much. It's low hydration, so a little work will do. What you do have to do is let it rest. So the gluten of the flour relaxes and it becomes softer. So I'm gonna wrap it with plastic wrap and let it in my counter for around 25 minutes. I'm back after 30 minutes because that's how I work. I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of flour in my table, on my dough and my rolling pin, and I'm going to make a disc. Because I let my dough relax, this process is going to be easier. If you want to work smarter, you may divide by weighting your dough into equal pieces, then ball them and roll each disc. But if you're like me and you like the hard way, then roll it out, cut your as many pieces as you can get, and re-dough it and cut more pieces. But honestly, it's not the most efficient or productive way, in my opinion. But this is who I am. I'm using the lid of one of those big containers of yogurts from Costco, which I deem it was a good size, which doesn't matter in the end because I ended up deciding that they were too small and too thick, so I gave them another pass with my rolling pin anyway. But this is where we are. So, as you can see, I have a lot of leftover dough that I have to put together again and repeat the same process. So, if you want to work smarter, then wait and divide your dough. I'm giving them a second pass with my rolling pin, applying even but light pressure. I ended up making discs of around 7 inches each, which I think is a good size for a paste, which is supposed to be a lunch, so it's more on the bigger side. And here I'm showing you how thin they are. They're pretty thin, but what it's nice about this dough is that it's pretty sturdy. Which is, I think, the main difference between a pasta and empanada. A pasta is supposed to carry heavier dishes inside, so it's supposed to be sturdier. In its origins, the miners were supposed to be able to carry it without it being compromised, so it requires a sturdier dough. An empanada, on the other hand, normally has lighter fillings, so you're gonna find them buttery, flaky, and more delicate. This dough will yield for 8 pasties if you weigh them. If not, you're gonna get 7 like me. Here is my meat feeling already cold and nice and thick. I'm going to add it. Don't go too crazy. You can add plenty, but don't overfill. Make sure to leave at least half an inch of leftover dough in the edges so you can make a nice fold. This is a very simple fold that I'm making. I'm just using a finger distance and then pressing down. Press down well. You don't need to add anything to glue the dough. It's gonna adhere to itself. Just make sure to press well. I like to clean the excess with a napkin, but you don't have to in the end. Some may still come out, but it's not gonna be a big deal. And here I have a close-up of what I'm doing. As you can see, every time I fold the dough over, I press it hard. It's very similar to what you would do with a double crust pie when you want them to stick together, and the corners always go up. When you are done, place them on a prep baking sheet. Preheat your oven at 350 and give them an egg wash. If you want them to turn out bright yellow, then use only the yolk. And in there go for 35 minutes or until golden, just like this. And here you have a cross section of it. You can see how it holds its shape really well. And just so you know, the filling is enough for 60. And here you have them. The thing about the braiding in the top is that this British man, the miners, would use this part as a handle. Since they didn't have access to wash their hands and they didn't want to contaminate their food, they would grab it by the braid and eat around it. And in the end, toss away the braiding. But we don't do that anymore. Now we eat it too. Pasties or pastries were so popular amongst the miners because it offered an easy way to bring your food, to handle it, and like I said, the most hygienic way to consume it. And once again, we have a dish that teaches us about history, immigration, and the importance of fraternizing with and helping each other amongst nations. So, shall we dig in? Pastas are a solid dish. A hearty filling with a nice crust is a win-win. Not to be confused with empanadas, that's a different story and a different video that we can do later on. For now, I'll leave you with pastas from Pachuca, which are great. Another important thing about this exchange of cultures is that British people not just stop right there. They also brought something important in Pachuca's life. Pachuca is considered the birthplace of Mexican football. Since 1829, the Pachuca football team has been going on, and we can definitely attribute to that starting to the British. So, another nice thing about mixing cultures. Just saying. So I really hope you enjoyed this recipe just like this video. And if you did, please share it with your friends. Like, subscribe, and be notified. And for more, follow me on the socials. Adios, amigas.